Guys, welcome to Comics on the Cross. My name is Caleb, aka Spacehawk, and with me today is Nitro. But if you notice, we actually have another special guest, and we have today is Jamey from Stonemaier Games. Jamey, how are you doing?
Hey, it's really great to be here today to talk about games and whatever we end up talking about today. Um, but yeah, I run a game company called Stonemaier Games here in St. Louis that I founded around 12 or 13 years ago, and we make games like Wingspan and Scythe and Viticulture and a bunch of other games at this point. We just announced or just launched our game Finspan, and yeah, I'm just happy to be here to talk with you guys today.
Awesome. Well, we'd love to hear more about just how you founded Stonemaier, if you don't mind.
Yeah. For most of my life, I have played games in some way. I played Magic the Gathering for a long time. I played games growing up. And while I was growing up, I was also intrigued by the creative aspect of games. And so I was designing games just for fun. And I was also my entire life intrigued by the idea of running my own business. I don't think I really fully understood what that meant or all the work that goes into it. But around 15 years ago, Kickstarter became a thing. And I was fascinated by it. I was like, okay. And I started to see game campaigns launch on Kickstarter and do pretty well. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I could take this lifelong hobby of mine and this lifelong interest of mine and combine them and try to run a Kickstarter for a game. And so I created Viticulture specifically to launch on Kickstarter back in 2012. And I wasn't expecting it to, I didn't even know if it would fund, much less end up being my career. But that's what ended up starting the company.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I will say, so we have a board game kind of cafe near where I live. So you can go in, rent a table, have some food, have some drinks, and play games. And they have just a ton of games. And one of the ones that I played with some of the friends that I was with was Viticulture. I'd never heard of it. And as we were playing, the hostess came by the table. She goes, the person that created that's from Virginia, right? I said, I did not know that. So I immediately looked it up. And Spacehawk and I was talking. I was like, we gotta talk. We gotta talk to this guy because obviously, I'm somewhat newer to the board game scene. One of the first ones that I played was Wingspan, so that kind of like opened my eyes to the mechanics of games, and more intense games. And it's been kind of downhill for me ever since then. But I guess my question is, what are some cool like trends, or maybe not some not so cool trends that you see kind of in the board game scene, like moving forward?
Yeah, I try to stay like I follow a lot of game media. I play a lot of games. I try to follow this type of stuff to see what is trending. The odd thing about trends, I would say in general in the board game industry, though, is like we're releasing Finspan right now, but we made the decision to publish Finspan 3 years ago, and we've been working on it for 3 years. It went to print like 8 months ago, and so a lot of trends end up just being kind of coincidences. Like when you see maybe two games with the same theme come out around the same time, they probably had no idea that was happening. They've been working on it forever. But I did think of one trend that I think is a real trend that is happening that we're seeing, and it's a good thing in my opinion, which is that more and more companies are at least thinking a little bit about environmental sustainability in the way that they package their games.
Okay.
You'll probably start to see this. You may have already started to see this in like little ways, where instead of having a deck of cards that's in shrink wrap that you just throw away and never see again, and it's in nature for the next 300 years, you might be seeing those cards wrapped in a paper strip or like fully wrapped in paper. And those little things I think add up and make a big difference. And I think we're seeing more and more companies do that. So that I think is a very positive trend that I think will continue.
That is really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I like to see that because it's, like you said, you get a lot of games that have like all these extra little plastic. I'll be honest, there's some games that I get a ton of plastic bags, like a ton, and I'm like, I'm not using half of these. So I have a 3D printer, which is, you can see it behind me. I have a 3D printer, so I print most of my like organizational pieces, which has been actually ironically on the print all day. I've been printing things for a game called Arkham Horror. I've been printing some organizational stuff for that. But yeah, that's awesome that you guys do that. That's, I really appreciate that for sure.
Yeah.
I do have a question about this. What is something players might not notice right away, but is meaning to you in the games that you create?
Yeah, this is actually just earlier today. My coworker emailed me about a feature of Fin. I know I keep talking about Finspan, but it's been on my mind a lot lately. We just launched it yesterday, so it'll come up. Here I keep pointing at it as if you could see it. Here it is next to me.
Okay.
Can I just go ahead and say real fast too?
Yeah.
I think the art on, because when I do my reviews, I do talk about art a lot, and the art on Wingspan. I haven't played Wormspan, but I've seen a lot of the art on it. It looks incredible.
Yeah,
absolutely incredible.
And I'll add the fact that you have a fan art pack for Wingspan is really dope. That's really dope.
Yeah, I see that right behind you there. That was a lot of fun to put together. For those who don't know what that is, we basically I've seen people create fan art for Wingspan for years, and so maybe 2 years ago, I reached out and I said, hey, there you go. If you are an artist, or even if you aren't an artist, but you want to draw a bird in Wingspan, send it to us, and maybe we'll put it in this fan art pack.
I love that.
That is
awesome. A lot of different mediums, creativity. But the thing that my coworker reached out to me to say, that something that I haven't really talked about in FinSpan, but I should, is that it has really robust player aids in it that explain all the icons. The player aid on the backside of it shows the anatomy of a card, and there's one for every player. And so this is a little thing that I think maybe people don't notice unless a game doesn't have it more often, or like you're like, I wish this game had an icon aid because I'm looking at this icon, I don't know what it means. I have to look through the rulebook to find it. Or a game has it, but they only have one, and every player could really benefit from that aid. And so it's something that we think about. I don't know if we've done it perfectly for all of our games, but most of our games have player aids for every single player that tell you things like the icons. They tell you how to win. They tell you things like that. And it's a little thing, but I think it adds up.
Yeah. It really is helpful, especially when you have a game with a ton of different pieces. I know our first time going around playing Wingspan, that's something I appreciated, because I have played, of course, we have a ton of games, but my wife is not as invested as I am to like learning every little piece, every little thing. And so when we played Wingspan the first time, we were like, oh, this makes sense, especially when we played the expansions too. And we're like, oh, this is what this icon means, or this is what we need to do with this, or whatever. It's truly helpful. I mean, that it makes a difference when you play more, I guess, games with like more pieces than, I kind of, in my head, I kind of separate like gamers. You have the ones that play Monopoly, then you have the kind of more intermediate gamers, where you play games that are like a little bit more into it, a little bit of Catan, and then you have like the more hardcore, intense players like myself who are like, give me the hardest, go on Board Game Geek and give me the hardest rated game and I'll figure it out and do all this research and I'm going to play it and we're going to win, and so I think for players that are moving from like that are gradually moving into that more intense, icon, stuff like that really helps move them along.
And I will say Spacehawk and I have played games together quite a bit, 'cause even though we live in different states, we see each other probably every other month. And there are those times where, we're trying to learn a new game. My least favorite part of the board game experience is learning new rules. I just can't stand it. I just want to play, and I'll figure it out as I go. But just having to go on YouTube and watch videos and then just keep having to refer to the handbook. It is cool having those like little, whether it's a card or whatever, something you can reference in front of you. There's a couple of games that I've played have that, and I really dig that. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
The other question I guess that I had, which I'm very interested in, just coming from a creative background, an art background, what's your process for like creating a game? Like, let's just use like viticulture, for example. Like, what was the process in kind of creating that ideating on it and like play testing it and all that stuff to, hey, you have a box in your hand that's the finished game?
Yeah. It's a big process. I'll try to answer it very succinctly because it is a pretty big process. But especially when I'm the designer for the game and the publisher, it's quite a long process. But usually I have an idea for either a mechanism or a theme. I think it was the theme first for viticulture, I'm pretty sure. But pretty quickly I was like, okay, I want this to be a worker placement game. So I do a lot of pencil and paper brainstorming early on, where I'm just combining, kind of mashing together themes and mechanisms. While I'm doing that, I'm also often playing other games that share those themes or those mechanisms, or learning about games like that, or even just refreshing myself about what people like about those games, even if I've already played them. And within a few weeks, I usually try to turn that into a prototype. And the first playtest of a prototype, so I'm building the prototype, that takes some time, the first one especially. And then I play it and it never goes well. The first playtest never goes well. And then I change it, often change everything, and then do it again, and do it again, and do it again, until the game hopefully is eventually, usually there's a moment where I'm like, okay, I'm actually having fun with this. I can tell it still needs a lot of work, but I'm having fun with it.
Yeah.
And then, and meanwhile, I'm doing some solo playtests, but usually playtest with other people. And then eventually we expand to blind playtesting, where we're sending these files to people around the world and asking them to playtest with their groups. And that's often to refine the rule book, which I've written before that.
Yeah.
As you can see, I can go on and on about this, but that's the beginning of the process.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's super interesting.
What advice would you give to someone who is just starting out, who's like, hey, I have an idea for a board game. What do I do? Like, I want to make this happen. What's the plan?
Yeah, I would say two things to someone who is at exactly that stage that you just said. One is don't overvalue the idea, because the idea probably already exists in some form, and it's your job to kind of figure that out in some ways. But also to acknowledge it, as fun as the idea is, it's really the execution of it that matters. We were talking about the comic book that you're working on right now. You could have an idea. Anyone can have an idea for a comic book, but actually spend the time to do the art for a 41-page comic book is a lot of work.
Yeah.
And that is so much more important, I think, in the end than the idea. The other part is just to play a lot of games, and play a lot of games that maybe you didn't expect to enjoy. A lot of games, I used to think that I was only a medium weight Euro gamer, and then I started to play games in other categories, cooperative games, miniatures games, all types of games. And I learned so much from playing those games as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I think we've answered all the questions that I had.
No,
I feel like we've been zooming.
No, so I want to know, so you can't choose any of your own games. That doesn't count. But what is one of your favorite games of all time?
I do. So I have a YouTube channel where I rank games a lot. So I think about games within different categories and how I rank them. I did one recently for my favorite games of 2024, and twice a year I do my top 10 games of all time, and that list changes all the time. But a few, I guess I'll mention a few that have ended up near the top of that list multiple times. Ark Nova. Have you guys played Ark Nova?
I've heard of it.
I've never played it,
and I'm very interested in it. It's on my list for sure.
Writing notes.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic game. Yeah. It's one of these games where everything you do feels good. You're always building towards something, and when you actually pull that off, like when you do all the things that it takes to play a lion card into your zoo, it just feels really good. And Dune Imperium. Have you played Dune Imperium?
No,
I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, Dune Imperium. It's based on the Dune franchise of books and movies and things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a worker placement deck building game. That one's really cool. You guys said that you like cooperative games with miniatures. I'm trying to think if there's any near the top of my list that fit those descriptions. Actually, Role Player Adventures, one of my favorite cooperative games of all times. It's a big box. It's a big campaign to run through. Although it's 10 sessions, but it is fantastic. And especially, I think you both mentioned that you play some role-playing games, and the story in that game is, and the choices that you make, and the consequences of those choices, really amazing in Role Player Adventures.
That's awesome.
Really cool.
Let me ask you this too. Now you got me curious. Is there a genre of game, and when I say genre, of course I mean like cooperative or asymmetric, whatever. Is there a genre of games that you guys have not made yet that you are potentially looking to in the future?
Actually,
you can tell us about.
No, you're asking this with perfect timing, because just the other day, in my head over the last couple of years, there's one genre of games, and there's a lot of genres of games that I like, but probably wouldn't fit with us as a publisher. And there's one type of game that I often get to the table that I realize I think I just want to publish this type of game. One of them. And this genre is the type of game. I'll get more detail in a second, but it's the type of game that you could bring to the table with anybody, and someone who hasn't played many modern games. In the vein of I don't know, have you played So Clover or Just One or The Mind? Those are all cooperative. It doesn't have to be cooperative, but these short, simple, light games with like 3 rules that you can really play with anyone, but you can have a lot of fun with them, even though you know games pretty well. That style of game. We don't have a game like that. And I'd love to have one, because I end up getting those to the table a lot. And I'd love to have one from us as a company where I can be like, instead of always pulling a game off the shelf from another company, I can have one of those that I'm proud of, that I want to share with people.
Yeah.
So that's the category. And so I mentioned this because we just put out the call for people to say, hey, we want this type of game. We're going to publish one of them. We'll find the best one, hopefully, and we'll publish it.
That's incredible. And I have to say, man, I really enjoy like just going to your website and checking out just everything on there, and just you put a personal touch to the website and to the fans of Stonemaier, which I really appreciate. I just want to give you kudos on that, because I think it's incredible how, you know, you put on there, hey, you know, I'm open to interviews, I'm open, you know, we do reviews, and you know, you have a blog, and I just think that's awesome. Just want to give you kudos and just a little bit of a shout out with that.
Thanks.
But man, you guys have, like I said, you guys have some incredible games. You know, we were talking before, and I said Scythe is next on my list. Like, I want to play it. That's one actually Nitro brought up to me. He was like, "Dude, have you heard of this game?" I was like, "No, I gotta check it out."
The thing that caught me was the art, like immediately, the cover, and then you look on the back, and I was like, "Oh shoot, it has miniatures. It's over." You know,
you had them sold on the miniatures, 100%.
Pull me in with the art, and you pull me back in with the miniatures.
Yeah, so that's how I feel about it too. I'm like, I love games with miniatures, and so that one was right up my alley. And of course, like I said, Wingspan is like one of my wife's favorite games. She loves the eggs, the little eggs. I mean, I think that's such an incredible thing. But what I wanted to ask you with that is, do you guys do like a lot of outside collaborations with just other people, or is it more? Do you guys try to keep things more internal? How does that usually go?
Yeah, I mean, we're still a pretty small company. I don't think that will change. I have 6 full-time coworkers now, but for a long time it was just me. And so a big part of my job is project management, working with people who are outside the company, working with artists, working with our graphic designer who's now internal, but for a long time she wasn't, and working with our manufacturers outside. So we outsource a lot of stuff to independent contractors and independent companies, organizations. So yeah, that's we work with a lot of people outside the company.
Does that include also like like if somebody has a game idea, do they approach you, or do you usually, you know, kind of look out for people that have great ideas and like, hey, we can, you know, work together to make your idea happen, you know, as a publisher in that sense?
Well, it kind of goes back to my previous answer a little bit. I'm not interested in ideas, but I am interested in execution. So if a designer has that idea and they go through the steps of prototyping and playtesting and refining and making the game, we do have a submission form on our website where they can look at our guidelines, look at the types of things that we're looking for, and submit it to us. And so about, at this point, maybe even over half of our games are designed by outside designers that I end up working pretty closely with to refine the game. Finspan was outside designer. I have Between Two Castles next to me here. Those are outside designers. Wingspan, that was Elizabeth Hargrave. She's from DC. So yeah, I love, in fact, that's one of the most surprising parts of my job now that I didn't expect when I started the company, that we would end up publishing games from other people. And I think Wingspan in particular has been a big game. It's a very popular game. It's sold very well. So it's been pretty big for the company, for us to have opened that up to other designers.
Yeah, that's awesome. And love the expansions as well. That's really cool. Yeah. There's so many birds. I'm like, I didn't know all of these birds existed. Like, I'm like, what is this?
I will say one thing that I appreciate about Wingspan, and I think you can also apply this to viticulture, is it's simple. Like, on the surface, it seems pretty simple, and like you can play it simply if you want. But if you want to get more in the weeds with it and develop different strategies, there's multiple different ways to get to the finish line. I like that in games. I like kind of pick your own path type deals. I will say my wife wipes the floor with me every time we play Wingspan, which is not fun. But I've just come to accept that that's part of the journey. But yeah, that's one of the things that I appreciate about at least the Stonemaier games that I've played. It's just kind of the versatility with how you approach it and how you play.
Yeah.
We try to build in multiple paths to victory. And sometimes one of those paths that I've kind of realized over the years that it's a different type of victory is sometimes it's just satisfying to build something or put together something that you are happy with.
Yeah.
When I play Wingspan, I'll see a bird that has maybe a difficult to use ability, or the bird just looks cool. And sometimes that feels just as good as scoring an extra 10 points.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, before we wrap up, is there anything that you'd like to promote? Just shout out. I know you mentioned Fence Man, so
Yeah, Finsman is definitely on my mind. It launched on our web store yesterday as of this recording. This is
awesome.
January 23rd. And it'll start shipping next week. And then this summer, while it isn't a miniatures game, I do have a cooperative game called Vantage that I've been working on for around 8 years now. It's a big open world cooperative game where you crash on a planet in different locations as all the other players, and it's not really a survival game. You just kind of explore the planet and do stuff on the planet. And so, given that you guys said that you like cooperative, that's one that I'm really looking forward to sharing with the world after working on it for 8 years.
Oh, wow.
Dang. Yeah, I have to look into that.
Yeah, you said cooperative planet, and me and Nitro's ears perked up, and we're already playing that. And we're telepathically planning when we're playing this game.
100%.
But it's actually one that you can play remotely too, because you crash land into different parts of the planet. Everyone needs a copy, but you two not being in the same state would not stop you from playing the game together. If you
that's awesome.
That's
don't
really
tell me
cool.
that. Okay, it's
it's happening now. Well, Jamey, thanks again for coming with us,
really
talking with us, answering our questions, hanging out with us. We really appreciate you. Guys, go check out Stonemaier Games. They have some truly incredible games. And that is it for us, guys. Stay safe, stay nerdy, and be blessed, and we will catch you next time.
Yeah.
Bye.